Chapstick. Okay, here we go.
Bear with me a second. Right. We are live. Just going to have to turn down a volume here somewhere any moment now. Bear with me. There we go. Right. Hi there. This is John Drew here from Elevated Planet and Nos Populi.
And Jolie Gabrielle as well from both. And we're so honored and grateful to be here with you on this Sunday for our live broadcast that John is going to tell us a little bit more about.
Yes, I am. And first off, I'm going to say hi, Janet, because we've already got a message in from Janet, who's with us today. She's been basically on her travels for the last few weeks, so we've missed her. But hi, Janet. Glad you're with us again. But yeah, so today is going to be a little bit different to what we normally do. It's going to be a little bit shorter and sharper because we're getting everything done within 45 minutes, including Jole's healing that she will do towards the end. And today, because we're doing it, we know that today's is going to be a little bit more edgy. We're going to be a little bit more, what is going on in the world and really not shirking away from it so much. We're going to sort of like go in there. And we're doing it through Gregg Braden, who is a very gifted messenger for the higher powers, as I see it. And so, what he comes out with is very profound and very deep. But I think this is really important information to share. So I think that, you're going to enjoy this. We're going to dive in pretty quickly. Is there anything you want to add, Jolie, before we go in and start our part one?
Yes, I'd just like to say this is a very heart moving, opening, understanding where the heart and the mind are going to connect. Gregg Braden is so really brilliant at that. So really take a listen and we're ready.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right, so basically this is a two-part series. Today is part one, then we will follow up sometime soon during next week with part two for you. But breaking this down gives us a chance to go explore this a little bit more. So bear with me a second and I will get us lined up with the right screen. Here we go.
There is so much happening in the world right now. A lot of turbulence, a lot of shift. We have an election year here in the States, and I was thinking, I know from so many listeners that write in about this time also in the midst of a lot of challenge and dark times that there's this desire to shift our own consciousness and awaken and tap into our hearts and heart intelligence. And I think that might be a good place to start. I know it's a huge question. It keeps coming to me is how do we do this in a real way when there are all kinds of, challenges and atrocities happening and an interesting year ahead? Like, where do we start and how do we do this work?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I don't think there's any single solution. I think there are probably many answers. What I have found in our community and like you, the end of the year was tough because of what's happening in the Middle East, certainly, and in other places, what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in our country. You and I live in America, and our country is not the country that we had at the beginning of the year, last year. And we're all seeing, to the degree that we will allow ourselves to see it, we're seeing these changes happen. One of the things I'm seeing happening, Julie, it's a psychological term. It's called normalcy bias. Normalcy bias is when we witness or experience things that are so foreign to our belief system, to our expectation, to our worldview, that we will not allow ourselves to acknowledge these things are even happening. I'll give you a classic textbook example. I'm not saying this is happening now, but if you read about normalcy bias in a psychology textbook, they will give World War II and the Holocaust as an example. In Poland, there were people that saw their friends and neighbors, loved ones, family members take a suitcase. They were allowed one suitcase and board a train. And the story that they told one another to make sense of this is that the people on the train were the lucky ones because they were being relocated to a new city, a new life, new jobs, while the war was being prosecuted in their home. They had heard rumors about the camps, about Auschwitz and Treblinka and the death camps, but their normalcy bias would not allow them to fathom that such large numbers of people could be systematically herded off that way. So they never let that enter their mind. And in a very real sense, it's not on the same magnitude, certainly, but we're seeing a degree of change in the world and certainly in our own country. And there's a tendency to overlook it, normalcy bias, to accept and normalize things in our lives that we would never accept and normalize in a million years in a sane world. Indoctrination of our children in public schools in certain ways, healthcare practices, all kinds of things. And what happens, you and I talked about this a little bit before we hit the record button, is when you live in a world and something comes along that is outside of that norm, and in a typical world you wouldn't accept it, but you do. You go along with it because everybody else is, or we're being, the media says it's okay, or all of our friends say it's okay, and you begin to normalize something in your life that you would never accept in a million years. So now what used to be normal for you here is no longer there. It's over here. All right. So you say, no big deal. Life still goes on. Still got, job, kids are healthy. So now something else comes along and you do that again, and it takes you from here over to here and from here over to there. Pretty soon you wake up one morning and you are so far away from the norms of what you would want your children to accept and what you'd want to live in your life. And you say, how did we get here? That's kind of what's happening in the world right now. Not just in America. And you said we have an election year this year. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but something is happening on planet Earth that has never happened in the modern world. 40 Western nations are having elections this year. 40 nations are now up choosing new leaders, and there's a tremendous concern among some circles that those leaders going to conform with the ideology moving the world in a direction of centralization and control, or are those leaders going to opt for sovereignty and freedom? And we don't know the answer to that until those elections happen. So it's a big year for the world, not just for America. What I think I'm seeing happen, and October 7th really brought it to the forefront, Julie, and I don't want to dwell on it. It's important, and it happens to be the pivotal moment that for many people brought into focus something that they didn't want to have in focus, that they didn't want to deal with. And now they're forced to because these events happened. And that is, how do we respond? How do we respond to those things? So let me, we talked off camera a little bit, and I'm just going to reiterate some of that. What I want our viewers to know, it's a difficult conversation. I was in London in my hotel room 2 hours before I went on stage when the news feeds started coming in of what was happening, and especially at the Nova Music Festival. And so I saw that America was asleep because of the time difference. They were, I think, 7 hours behind. When I got back to the hotel room that night, I started watching the US. I don't usually watch TV, but I tuned into the networks to see what was going on. And here's what I saw, Julie. The news feeds that America was allowed to share with everyday people was very different from the news feeds originally coming out of the Middle East, out of Eastern Europe, out of Asia. And the reason I'm saying this is because America has not been allowed to see the truth of what happened on October 7th. Part of that is politically driven narrative. Part of that is the social media algorithms will not allow, for community guidelines, they won't allow the images. The net result is we have a generation of young people who say that the atrocities never happened. They're saying if they did happen, we would have seen them. Or if they did happen, why don't we know about them? And so they are now not having that information. They are making choices in their lives and publicly protesting in ways that don't make a lot of sense. It makes sense to them based upon this skewed and distorted information that they were given. And to some degree, that's happening to all of us. We are all casualties to some degree because we are not really being allowed to see. We're seeing distorted views of what happens in Ukraine, of what's happening at the Texas border right now, of what happens socially. And all of this is dividing. It's breaking the social bonds that have held our families together for generations, that have held our communities together, our societies, and ultimately our nation. So we have become a very divided nation because the social bonds are being broken through misinformation, disinformation. And a lot of it, I believe, is intentional because there is an effort to create a more vulnerable society. And this has deeply spiritual implications. But when we don't have those social bonds, Julie, we are susceptible and vulnerable to the ideas and the policies of others that want to drive us in a certain direction. Right now, we're being driven towards centralization, toward control, loss of freedoms across the board. And a lot of it is coming from, from the UN. A lot of it is coming from other organizations linked to the UN. We can do a whole conversation on that. Everybody knows. I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't already know. The point is we have to deal with it. This is what's up for us every day in our lives. And what I have found in my community, for example, I'll just take the atrocities in Ukraine and what's happening in Ukraine, because the war crimes are happening there as well, or the war crimes that are happening in the Middle East, in Israel. What it does, Julie, is it triggers something deep within us. And the management of the information triggers very precise reactions. Primal instincts are triggered when we see women and children abused and killed. Primal instincts are triggered when we see helpless families and the elderly. And we then want to react. And what's happening, my friends, some of them you have on this program, authors that people know, they don't know what to do because they are feeling an anger, they're feeling a hate, they're feeling rage, they want revenge in some cases, based upon the narratives that they're being shown. So what do we do with that? How do we deal with that in a healthy way? What I have found, and this is where it is a really deeply spiritual conversation, is it's less about how we respond and more about what we become in the presence of that response. Do we allow what we see in the media to make us into something that we would never choose to be in a million years? Do we allow the narrative that has been carefully honed to trigger us? Do we allow that to reduce us to this primal instinctual level where we lash out in hate and anger and revenge? And we have to ask ourselves, when we feel those reactions, which are perfectly normal human reactions, they're being engineered. When we feel those, we have to be honest with ourselves and say, is this is this information making me into something that I don't want to be? Is it making me become, because we are not healthy when we go through our day carrying the hate and the anger and the feeling for the need for revenge. So when we find ourselves in those reactions, we have to ask, are we reacting from the love of what we know is possible and true in our lives, or are we reacting from the hate or the fear of what that information is triggering within us? And the answer to that question then takes us to the next steps in terms of what we need to do. If we find ourselves being triggered in fear, where does that fear come from? How could something halfway around the world incite fear inside of us in our homes? What is it lighting up? What fear in our lives has never been resolved? What trauma has never been resolved? And I'm not saying it's good, bad, right, or wrong. This is where we are right now in our world, because there's so many events and so many atrocities that are happening. When we respond, are we going to respond in a healthy way? So now there are some people I've had, there's the argument about the inner warrior. Do you fight or do you turn the other cheek? And for me, I think it's less about what we do, again, and more about what we become. If we choose to fight, whatever that means, if it's a kinetic fight or if it's a social media fight, if it's a verbal confrontation, whatever it is, does that come from the love of those behind us, our family and our loved ones, or does it come from the hate of those that we perceive to be our enemies? Do we fight from the love of what we know is possible, or from the fear of what happens if we don't? And there's a lot of narratives out there about fear, inciting fear in people, that what you're seeing happening over there can happen right here. So it's an important conversation. It's difficult because there are so many other narratives and so much baggage that come with it. But on the ultimate deeply, I'll ask your permission. Do I have your permission to go to the ultimate deeply spiritual level? Are you okay with that?
Oh, I'm like waiting for it. Yeah,
all right, so
please.
I think all of this, although it is current in our lives now, is actually part of something very ancient and very primal that has been with us from the very beginning. It's a battle between good and evil, not from a religious sense, but we live in a polarity world. And in a polarity world, both of those must be present. The question is, what do we identify with, and what do we choose to dominate our world? And you're seeing that battle play out in media, in entertainment, in politics. You're seeing it play out kinetically in what happened at that Nova Music Festival and beyond. You're seeing it happen with what's happening in Ukraine. A lot of people don't know this. U.S. has boots on the ground. We're involved in wars, 22 wars on the planet right now. Most of them you never hear about. Most of them you never hear a word about. And all of them are carrying the same message. These events, Ukraine and what's happened in the Middle East, happen to be lighting it up for us front and center. And we have to choose. We have to make a stand. Do we identify with the evil, or do we identify with the good? And what do we allow? What do we normalize in our lives and accept into our society? And again, it's a question we have to answer together. It can't be done for us. But it's difficult when the events are weaponized to divide us rather than used to bring us together in kindness so that we can work together to create a better world. That's a possibility, but that's not what's happening right now. And there's more of us than there is of they. We haven't even talked about who the they are, but there's more of us. We get to choose. And I think it's really important now, Julie, because I think you have a very sophisticated audience, and that's why I really enjoy coming on with your audience, because we don't have to start at ground zero every time. We can assume certain things are known and accepted. One of those is, I think we can all agree and assume that there's a new world emerging that's not quite here yet. And the old world that we grew up with, it's still there, but it's buckling and collapsing because it's unsustainable in its present form. So that new world's not here yet because we're still building it. I don't know everyone in your community or on this podcast, but I bet I know this about everyone. I would imagine anyone watching this does not want to carry the hurt from the world that we've known into that new world as the foundation of that new world for our children. We don't want to carry the suffering that we've known in the 19th and the 20th centuries and the Holocausts and the atrocities, humans against humans. We don't want to carry that into the new world. And it's up for us to heal right now. If we respond with hate and anger, doesn't mean we don't fight, but do we fight from hate and revenge, or do we fight from the love of what we know is possible in our lives, what we want for our children? That becomes that keystone or the cornerstone or the foundation of that new world. I think we are dealing with generational healing.
Okay, so there we have it. Right, back with me. So yeah, okay, so that is there's a lot of information there, and that just takes us halfway through this series. But nevertheless, there's a lot of talking points here. You know, one of the things that Gregg mentioned early on was talking about this idea of normalcy bias, which was kind of what was witnessed when the Holocaust was first going on in World War II, where people find ways of making the unacceptable acceptable by telling themselves stories that kind of take something that was previously totally unacceptable and managing to move the dial so it becomes acceptable. And there's good reasons why this happened, because clearly people don't really want to disrupt their lives unnecessarily. And sometimes, if you can see, the only way that you can continue as usual is to by shifting your values. But having shifted your values, then the temptation is the next thing comes along, you do the same thing again and the same thing again. And then ultimately you reach a point where you're so far away from where you had, like, what you would consider, as you sit here now, decent human values. All of a sudden you kind of realize you're accepting things which are way off the scale. And as with the Second World War, it took a long way before that then led to action from the Allies to really get in and sort that mess out. Because at the end of the day, that was something that you would hope would never be repeated, and yet we still see genocide, we still see atrocities, we still see war crimes. And we don't normally go to this level within Elevated Planet, which is why we start to bring this out under the name of Nos Populi, we the people, because it is by drawing together we the people and to start to raise everyone's attention to what is actually going on here, that we can actually have a forum where we can pull people together and bring us back towards that world of unspeakable beauty, because it is out there and it is waiting for us. And one of the things that we have to realize is that we have a lot of power. We have way more power than we've been encouraged to believe. And there's an awful lot of distortion out there as well. It was interesting what Gregg said about 40 westernized nations are holding elections this year. And then there's the question of, okay, well, will the new leaders, be looking to allow, the normal, what we would consider normal, the freedom that we've enjoyed? But at the end of the day, there's been so much control agenda for quite some time. We saw this with COVID, very much a control agenda. And it seemed very necessary at the time from what we were told about the disease COVID, the virus COVID. But, retrospectively, we're looking back at that and questions are being asked now and truths are being uncovered that kind of say that was an unacceptable. That was one of those unacceptable things that we were asked to accept. But at the time, you believe and you trust the media, you trust the government. But I think that, what this calls for is not paranoia, but discernment. You know, that's the important point. We have to be discerning. We have to realize, and you know, I find it fascinating what Gregg said about when he was in that hotel room in London, looking at different news feeds from around the world, because that's when you're staying in an international hotel, you're getting news feeds from Asia, you're getting news feeds from the Middle East, you're getting news feeds from Europe, and you're getting news feeds from America, and being able to refer across and realize the different stories that different nationalities are being told, you start to realize, you know, and this is something, this is not new. Okay. I mean, we've been talking about this now for a long time. You know, if you go back over our blogs and everything, we've been talking about this for years. And it's, but again, I never realized this. You know, it was 6 years ago since I started to kind of, the penny started to drop and I started to understand the nature of consciousness a little bit more and actually, you know, how beautiful this life is and what opportunities it brings us, and actually that we do have a lot more power. And it's, you know, I know that journey began with my daughter making sure that, well, she led to me going for a reading 6 years ago, which kind of opened my eyes up to the fact that the afterlife was real, which I'd never really truly believed. I know Stephanie is over in Los Angeles and she's here in the audience right now. So thank you, baby. Thank you for beginning the journey. You're to blame for this, but but I've never looked back, and it was for me it was a wonderful trigger point that really has led to me opening my eyes as well. What else? So yeah, will our new leaders uphold sovereignty and freedom or move towards a more centralized control? Because there is this stuff within United Nations, this stuff within the World Economic Forum, which is talking about, and this will come into it more next time, but 15-minute cities, which is where everybody has to operate within a given geography and needs permission to go outside of ridiculously small areas. And I think nobody's going to put up with that. But this has been talked about for years, and by 2030, they're looking to enact a lot of these things. Now, I cannot believe that we are going to have enough normalcy bias going on to allow that to happen. You know, these are basic freedoms that there is a plan out there at a very high level to start to remove these freedoms. So, you know, these are very interesting times where we have to step into our power and not accept things that we do not like and do not, you know, do not agree. They do not match with our basic human rights. So what else we got? Yeah, the skewed versions of events through the media, the need for discernment is important. He also mentioned that the USA is involved in 22 wars in the world right now. And then I asked myself the question, well, how many am I aware? Now, I'm not in America anymore. So maybe in America, I might be aware of 3 or 4 of them. I'm certainly aware of 2. But then when you think about it, you think 22? And it's hidden from view for the largest extent, right? So there's a lot of information that's being withheld. And that kind of then talks to that point that he made about indoctrination. You know, indoctrination, not just about wars, but also about the way that education is being shaped, the way that healthcare is being shaped, and so many other things. You know, we're being asked to buy into sort of narratives. And yet, because we now know that the media narratives are so skewed, how do you discern about what truth is, you know, and what is behind the control agendas that are being put forward? So, you know, these are the kind of things that in the primal instincts that are triggered when we witness atrocities. I've seen that, you know, within some of the videos that have come out, not through our media, but have been shared, and they're very hard hitting. And yes, absolutely, they do trigger those primal instincts. And it certainly triggered me into a deeper level of action with Elevated Planet to know that there are messages that need to get out there and need to be talked about. You know, we can't afford to bury our heads in the sand. You know, it's a temptation, but I think that now is a time where we're being called to action. And that doesn't mean, you know, buying yourself a tank and starting to roll towards the Middle East or towards Eastern Europe or whatever. There's ways that we can do this, which is exercising the power that we have, which actually is bringing love to the world. It's bringing peace. It's bringing harmony. It's bringing a balance that is missing at the moment. And we can do that because, you know, then we're acting from that love and compassion of knowing what is possible in the world. A new world is emerging while the old one is buckling and collapsing. What values will we choose to carry into our new world? You know, and we the people have significant power, and that world of unspeakable beauty awaits for those who can rise above the rhetoric and to see it for what it is. We can create that. We have it within our path, and we're going to begin that journey, particularly in the second half of this year. You know, I can see that this is the way we're going. This is a time that's been foretold. This is something that, you know, it was in the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the War Scroll. It was in the Bible and the book of Revelations, chapters 21, 22. It was in the Nag Hammadi text. Nostradamus spoke about it at length. Many of his quatrains were talking about the time of troubles, which is the time that we appear to be entering right now. And if nothing's truly happens of significance by the end of 2024, then we can be called out for, you know, actually having misled people. That's the truth of it. In many ways, I'd be glad to be wrong. I don't think I am. I don't think we are. I don't think Gregg Braden is wrong. I think that this is just now planting the seeds so that we can start to do something positive for our community and for our world. Jolie, can I bring you back in to add your comments?
Absolutely. And like I said, you know, I don't know if many people are aware, but Gregg Braden works with the Heart Math or the Heart Math Institute. So he's very based in the heart. And if you look at a lot of us, what we're trying to do is we're trying to intellectually understand spirituality. And, you know, a lot of times spirituality is a feeling and it's an emotion. And that's something that we're very uncomfortable with because feelings and emotions require maybe a reaction, which
Yes.
isn't always going to be pretty and joyful. You might have to have a cathartic moment of anger, or all of these emotions are appropriate. It is just that now that we're moving into a 5D understanding and world, it's about knowing how to focus them, where to use them, and utilize that energy towards good.
Yeah.
So so what does that look like? The skill set is to get the heart and the brain connected. The mind is something totally different, and that's for a whole different life. But when you get the brain and the heart in coherence with each other, then those cells really begin to wake up. And I think this is what Gregg means, the fight, right? So if you want to talk about fighting, it's not fighting against anything, because John, you and I know that we are big proponents of Socrates. Let's not fight the past, let's build the new. So your quote unquote fight is to build the new, is to let go of the old paradigm that you believed in, where war was an option, where even warring with yourself or warring with those around you is something that you even engage in. It's like, hey, wait a minute, let me turn this negativity into something positive. You know what? Let's agree to disagree, but on the bottom of this, know that I love you, but right now I may need a moment. Maybe that's a new skill set to articulate, knowing how you can say that to someone, to cease fire, disengage, right? And
Yes.
go someplace and let Mother Earth and you commune, or let you and your practice with the divine commune, so that when you show up to this beautiful divine being, guess what? You are giving your best. And guess what that does? Like palms in like a rock in a pond, those energy vibrations reverberate. So just start there, okay?
Yeah,
And
that's fantastic. Yeah.
I just am grateful, and I really would love to do some meditation and a little bit of theta to help us to really understand all of ourselves, to get on board with what it is we're trying to uniquely create. Because in order to get out of the normalcy bias, we have to feel safe being unique in our own energy signature from divine.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do that. I've got another comment from Janet here, so I think let's just give that a little bit of attention. So I think it's wise to be aware, but don't let it lead to anger and hate. We can fight for our sovereignty in a positive way. which is exactly what you've just said, Chole, right?
Yeah.
Different words, but absolutely nailed it. Again, as Janet always
Yes.
has a tendency to do.
Yes, absolutely. And Janet knows that, it is human to feel emotions. But the thing about it is have an outlet that is not another human being or an animal or something living being, have an outlet that, hey, I'm really stressed out and I have this to help me release whatever that may look like.
Exactly. Exactly. And what we're going to do now then, Jolie, we're going to hand it over to you because we're going to put our copper wire spiral on here and we are going to let you work your magic.
As always, it's truly a blessing to be here. And so we begin with the breath, the life that we have been given from the divine. So let's go ahead and slow that down and command our heartbeat to sync up with our breath. As we then bring our awareness to between our sit bones and ground our energy. You want to clean off your grounding cord and let that happen as you blanket the inside and the outside of your grounding cord. Go ahead and do it while the grounding cord's being created and root yourself. Pull in your aura layer to be 1.5 feet around you. Call your higher self to a comfortable distance above your head and snap in that astral body. We're going to go ahead and run 15% earth energy by opening the bottoms of our feet like we would the lens of a camera, letting that beautiful earth essence of water, air, fire, crystal, rope, tree trunk, earth, light, whatever it is that resonates with you, lava, fire, go ahead and allow for that to pool in the feet and move up the side channels of the legs as you open your crown like you would the lens of a camera and allow for that beautiful golden cosmic life force energy to cascade down, filling up all the folds within the brain, allowing for you to create new pathways, ones that support you, connecting that brain with that heart and that higher self, all in alignment with you. And right here, as this energy begins to fill us up like water fills up a cup, with your permission, say yes if you want it. I'd like to give you from Creator's perspective, understanding, and definition. It's commanded that you align back with your true core beliefs and have the heart to manifest them and set clear boundaries going forward. And any trauma from those experiences be resolved and dissolved, send down that grounding cord. Thank you, it is done and so it is. So now, anywhere in our body that there is normalcy, balance, it cannot maintain the vibration as we bring in that earth and that beautiful cosmic life force energy. So let's go ahead and out that program, that pattern, and wherever it is holding itself in our bodies, we're going to go ahead and remove and resolve that pattern, program, vow, contract, agreement, or other obligation, resolving and dissolving it on a history level. And we're going to send it to Creator's light and replace it with unconditional love for others and self and unconditional forgiveness. As we move out, first we turn a bright yellow, any of that normalcy bias that is sitting in our cells and in our muscles and in our body. And we send that beautiful earth energy and that cosmic gold light to go ahead and flush that down our grounding cord, putting a golden sun above our head. And we bring that down. Just listen to my words. Just close your eyes and breathe. Your higher self is taking everything in. We're doing a lightning rod healing right now. So just breathe with the rhythm of your body. Say yes. Allow the permission for this healing to take hold in the highest and best way with grace and ease, letting the light in. It is safe for you to align with your unique energy signature, and you have the courage to be seen. So now we're going to have a positive teaching healing, negative teaching healing, trauma teaching healing, making it safe for us to be seen. That's bundled in that positive teaching healing, but in the perspective, understanding, and definition of the Creator, to have that positive attention be shined upon us, knowing that we are safe to say, hey, this is incorrect, whether it is verbally or with our actions, knowing that we are creating a support system around us that also sits in their unique energy signature. And it is safe for them to raise up and rise up. Allow that heart and that brain to connect, to be seen, and to allow that energy, that positive energy, to reverberate out into the universe in the highest and best way with grace and ease. Thank you. It is done, and so it is. Take a deep breath in. And now we're going to do a positive teaching healing, negative teaching healing, trauma teaching healing, as this earth energy and this cosmic gold life force energy move throughout our body, turning every cell in our bodies heart-shaped as we fill up all the space within with divine guidance from our higher self and divine. But we know our unique energy signature sits inside of all of the space within these heart-shaped cells and atoms, pulsating love throughout our system, moving out the hatred, moving out the anger, the jealousy, and most definitely the fear, moving in the love, the unconditional love, the forgiveness, opening ourselves up to be guided divinely by the light of divine Creator. Take a deep breath in, exhale. Feel all of this beautiful energy moving throughout your body as you focus and concentrate on your goals. That divine energy signature that has you in a state of joy, unconditional love, financial prosperity, abundance, and you are safe receiving the positive attention that allows for you to build, not only for yourself, but your environment in the highest and best way with grace and ease. And we are also going to, with your permission, please say yes if you want it. Positive teaching healing, negative teaching healing, trauma teaching healing, bringing in the universal law of polarity. All of us know what it looks like, feels like, sounds like, and acts like. This is bundled in that positive teaching healing. To have the law of polarity fill up that space, to lock in with that unconditional love and forgiveness that's in those heart-shaped cells that are making up every part of us, locking in, bringing into harmony the extremes that we may be experiencing, from anger to love, right? How do we create a harmony and a focus so that we know a practice? We create a practice that allows us to release, but at the same time, fill up. Let's open up to the possibilities of what that is and allow for our intuition to guide us into that understanding of what our practice is, our unique energy signature practice that allows us to release depression, anxiety, fear, and fill up with divine life force energy and action and execution of that light and those messages that come down and through us, creating a harmony and that law of polarity. Last but not least, as we breathe in and exhale and know that our heart is in rhythm with our breathing and our brain, all of our chakras are in alignment. We're running this 15% earth energy, this 85% cosmic gold, knowing that 15% is a color that resonates with you. You're rooted and grounded into Mother Earth in the present moment. Your higher self sits at a comfortable distance above you. Your astral body is snapped in, and your aura layer is 1.5 feet around you. Take a deep breath in as we do a positive teaching healing, negative teaching healing, trauma teaching healing with your permission. Say yes. To reconnect all of the social bonds that we may have lost, so that our unique social bonds can all begin to bring in more light, to bring in more love, and to allow for that energy, like I said again, hold the space for that love to reverberate out into the universe, and that peace within you be an energy signature that magnetizes that energy around you as well. And we ask that those primal instincts be guided by the highest part of us in the highest and best way with grace and ease. So that limbic system of the brain be guided by the higher self and the love of the heart, sandwiched between both. So that ego knows that it takes its directives from the higher self in the highest and best way with grace and ease. Thank you. It is done, and so it is. Take a deep breath in. I'd like you to close those feet chakras like you would the lens of a camera, along with the crown. Allow for that energy to settle as you stay rooted and grounded into Mother Earth. Take a deep breath in, exhale, and hold the space for love, peace, and unconditional joy, which leads to what? Unspeakable beauty. Thank you. It is done, and so it is. And you may open your eyes.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jolie. That was very nice, and I love the fact that we finished with unspeakable beauty, because that's the perfect note to finish the halfway point for this week. And we will be sending the weekly newsletter out later today with the recording of what we have just seen for those who wish to watch it again, or those who want to watch it for the first time. Looking forward to seeing Gregg at the end of May in Sedona. And you know, I know we're going to keep learning stuff, and we will take it into the second half of the year, and we will be building on that theme of unspeakable beauty. So yeah, and again from also from Janet, one final note to say thank you, Jolie, for the meditation.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I think we've got so much to look forward to. There's a lot going on in the world which appears to be negative, but the fact is, it was always supposed to happen. This is, you know, it's talked about in the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the War Scroll. It's talked about in the Nag Hammadi text. It's talked about in the Bible, in the Book of Revelation. This is supposed to be happening because it helps us to elevate ourselves and the planet into that world of unspeakable beauty. And this is going to happen. So till
Absolutely.
right.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much to all of our listeners and viewers, and to the Elevated Planet community, and of course to you, John. It's such a privilege to do this and an honor. So what blessings.
Yeah, that's the thing. I have so much gratitude for the life that we have and the opportunities we have. It's a wonderful world. The truth be told, it is a wonderful world. We may need to take some action along the way, but you know, we're doing it out of love, and we're doing it to create the world that we want to live in. So it doesn't get much better than that.
All right.
Fantastic. Thank
Till
you,
next
Jolie.
time.
Till next time, and thank you all.
Bye-bye.
And